Hey guys, and welcome to this tutorial on TileSets and TileMaps in Godot. Let's get started on getting you that awesome map for your game. In this tutorial, I'll be making use of assets from Kenny.nl. They're free downloadable assets, so you can get them too. I've specifically chosen for the isometric dungeon tiles and the isometric library tiles as they fit together very neatly. You can easily find this by searching for isometric in the search bar. When you click one of these and you press the download button on the right side, that will give you a zip folder that looks a little bit like this, or exactly like this, in case you're downloading the dungeon folder. In the folder isometric, you'll find all the images that form the tile set, or the assets for the tile sets. I've copied over all these assets, all these images, over to my project folder, where I've created a folder assets and then a folder dungeon set, where you can see all the assets are present. Now that you know where to get these images from, these tile sets from, let's go over to Godot to make it a real tile set resource, which we'll then use to make a tile map. Do you want to learn how to design and make games, or maybe just want to learn more about Godot? Subscribe to this channel and don't forget to hit that little bell icon to make sure you don't miss out on anything. Also, if you're curious about the game development projects that I do myself, you can find me on my Twitch stream. I stream every Tuesday and Thursday. The links, the schedule, the description, the details, all in that description box below. Now let's continue. Now when you start Godot, or the specific project you've loaded your images to, you'll see that first you'll get a bar, a progress bar, that is going to import all those images into Godot. Have a little bit of patience, get a cup of coffee if it takes very long if you put a lot of tile sets there, and continue afterwards. First, we're going to be making a new 2D scene. And in this 2D scene, we're going to open our assets, our dungeon set, and I'm going to take all these images and I'm going to drag them in here. Now that will create all these sprites as childs of Node 2D. Now with Node 2D selected, I'm going to go to Scene and I'm going to go to Convert and convert to a tile set. That gives me this pop-up and I have to save it as a resource. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this Resources and I'll call this dungeon.tres. That stands for resource. I'll be saving it. Now with that done, we can now go to a new scene, new 2D scene. We can add a child, we can add a tile map, we can create it, and up here under the tile set we can load that resource in. Now you'll see that I'll have all these images right here, and with these images I can draw. However, you can see that the cells, it's not, first of all, it's forward angled, it's not isometric, and the cells don't match the size. So under the mode here, we can set square to isometric. That's making our tile map or our map isometric. And then under cell, we can set the size of each of these cells of the tile map. So we're going to go for a 256 by 128 size, as that is the size that fits with the tile set that Kenny made. However, this can be different for different tile sets that you can find over the internet or that you might be making yourself. Now with this, you can see that we can create different tiles and we can put different things together. However, the tile set is very big and there's a lot of different things in here. And in the end, what we would want is that even if we would have a little bit of a patch, we would want to put a wall on there. Now that wall will be written over the dirt that you have laid down earlier. In other words, if you want to create something like an internal environment with walls and candles and maybe crates and barrels and kegs, then you need to layer tile maps on top of each other. Now for that purpose, we're going to be making a layer tile map, and every different layer can have different assets. Now, as I like to have my assets split in, for example, a tile map for floors, a tile map for walls, a tile map for other stuffs like kegs and barrels, it's also handy to have all those different tiles separated into different tile set resources. So what I'm going to do in the background is I'm going to revert this big tile set, and I'm gonna split that big tile set into 3, 4, maybe 5 different tile sets separately that I can look up or hook up to each of the TileMap layers that we'll be making. And this is basically just reproducing the work we just did with making a tile set. So I'm not gonna do that on camera. You can do that perfectly yourself. You just drag the right images into the Node 2D. So here, when we have all these sprites, instead of adding all of them, I'll be selecting the ones that I want to add from this list, and then I'll make a resource out of that specific selection. I'm doing it a couple of times, and then I'll be back with you with the end result that you can easily reproduce yourself. Okay, there we are again. As you can see, we got the dungeon tile set that we made ourselves together, and now I've created 4 more tile sets: the floor tiles, the library tiles, which has like bookcases and stuff like that, stuffs, which is basically a lot of stuff, really, maybe some chests, some barrels, stuff like that we can play with, and the walls. So I've got 4 tile sets now. I won't be using this dungeon tile set anymore, as that is the total package, which is very hard to navigate due to the amount of stuff that is in there. So we saved those 4, and you might be wondering, what can I do with this Node 2D with all these images inside? You can just throw it away. You don't need it anymore. We made the resources, don't have to save that, we can delete that. So here I got that Node 2D that we had earlier as well, only I've emptied the couple of tiles that we had put down. It's still an isometric. We still got 256 by 128. Now what I'm going to do first is I'm going to copy this, or duplicate actually, by using Ctrl D a couple of times. It doesn't matter, these are called floor, we can rename them later. But this way, whenever we start a new layer, we don't have to reset isometric and reset the cell size. That will be remembered in all these duplicates. If we got too many, we can always delete them later, that's no problem. So under the first one, on the floor, which is going to be the real floor, I'm going to load up the tile set from the resource, and I'm going to load floor. Now this is going to give me the floor pieces that I've selected. I didn't include every single one for this tutorial, so you may have a couple more. So when we select one of these tiles, we can place them down. You can also hold your mouse button and place a couple of them. Now if you hold your shift key before you press your mouse button, you can actually make lines, and that makes it really easy to make straight lines, and that's especially easy once we start putting the walls in, as it will make it very easy to make long sections of wall without basically doing a boo-boo. So once you get this square here, you might be wondering like, oh wow, I've got to fill up everything. This takes so long to draw this everything up. Well, there's actually a tool here. It's called the bucket tool, or bucket fill, and it might not be up here in your toolbar. It might be here on the tile map. You have to see for yourself where yours is. And when you press this big thing, if you have closed that correctly by making the lines, then you can see that. Oh, now I have to fill each and every one of these because I was too enthusiastic with demonstrating how handy it is to to paint one by one. Anyway, so now we got a little bit of a floor, but it still looks very flat. It looks unimaginative. So we probably better put a couple of walls on here. So for those walls, I'm simply going to be renaming this to walls. And these walls, I'm going to go to the tile set, the resource, and I'm going to be loading up our walls. Now that's going to give me my walls that I selected for this tutorial, and we can put down a couple of walls. So again, I'm going to use Shift to make this a little bit easier. So we can put a wall here, and we could put a cornerstone on the top there. You have to look for, this is the north, this is the south side, so we need the south one this time, as the north one will not be lining up exactly. They'll be just behind, as you can see. If you ever want to remove a tile, by the way, if you are hovering over exactly where the tile is, you can see that the square turns from orange to blue. When you click your right mouse button, you remove the tile. So with Shift, I'm going to be making a little bit of a sort of little bit of a map. I'm not going to make anything special, nothing super fancy, but as you can see, now this doesn't line up because we need to use this wall in this case, or maybe this wall. Yeah, we need to use this one. And as you can see, we're just making something very easy, nothing fancy. That's not necessary, and you know what, you can probably figure that out for yourself. We might want to put a door in here. Oh, not that door, we need this door. So there's a door in there, and maybe we put in some arches. This is not the right one, I need to have this one. So there, that you can walk through that. Now you can see by this isometric arch, you can already sort of see that you're gonna get a sort of an illusion of 3D, but it's not 3D, everything is just flat. It's just the illusion of 3D that a 2D game in isometric style can arrange. Now, as you can see, I've got the walls as the second one. You can switch these layers over and between. Like if I would drag this, the walls would now be drawn behind the floors, which is not what we want. And this layering is very important, because if next we're gonna put some stuffs in here, not trying to make up any fancy names in this tutorial, and I'm gonna put my stuffs resource in there. I'm gonna, for example, get some of these kegs that I can place down next to the side, and maybe we'll put another couple of few there, and maybe we'll have some extra support. And actually, you know what, for that support we can put it down here. But and you see, when I put it behind this wall, it will draw it in front of the wall, because the stuffs is below the walls in the order, the node order. If I would turn around these stuffs and put it between floor and wall, you would see that it is now behind the wall. But if I were to do that, the kegs are now behind the wall as well, which is not what we want. So when you're layering in isometric, it actually makes a lot of sense. Let me remove that to, and let me take another one. I'm gonna call this stuffs behind, and we'll rename this to stuffs in front. And we'll reposition this behind between floor and walls, and we'll be adding that resource stuffs to it. And now with that we can draw a couple of support beams right behind those walls there if we feel like it, or if you want, you could draw a couple of barrels. Like for example, if there were a couple of barrels there, you can see now the wall is properly covering the barrels, creating that illusion of 3D. Now with that, let's have a look at how we can make this wall, or sorry, this floor a little bit less, you know what, copied. You can clearly see there's a copy of the same tile. Let's fix that next. So for that floor, as you probably saw, I got a lot of different options here. So what I usually like to do is like to say, okay, let's get a couple of dirt patches in here. Let's say the floor is broken. We're gonna make some sort of an old library, you know, forgotten in time, typical, little bit Diablo 2 stylish sort of thing. So we'll just be, usually what I do is I first make the big pieces. I lay those out, and you know what, let's go there, and then we can find a piece which fits on there, and we're just gonna make it like this floor is broken a little bit. We can take, for example, I know there's a nice patch of broken stones here. Maybe we can copy that over. Now there's maybe a couple of loose tiles as well on this map. There you go. We don't want to copy that over too much into different areas. So we're gonna change that, make that open, change it a little bit there. Maybe there's a few holes here. I believe we have one there, and let's turn it around. Maybe there's a couple of broken ones over there. You know, you can just turn this around and make it look however you want it to look. You know, maybe take this one, and let's take this one here. You know, now it feels like, okay, you got a little bit of a patch here that's sort of broken. Tiles are broken out. You can see by simply replacing on the floor map, you can replace with TileSet especially the different sort of floor styles that you want, and you can make something that looks pretty reasonably good in a very short amount of time. So with that, let's have a look at more advanced assets and how you can add more assets, especially in the middle of the room. So for this library, let's take the next layer, rename it to library, and we'll be adding our TileSet resource of library to it. Now this library got a couple of things, like mostly it got bookcases, but these bookcases, they got a shadow, and because of that they don't look that great next to the wall, as the shadow just looks very weird on top of this. So I prefer to use this set in a case like this, in the middle of the room, where it looks really nice. Now what would be nice if we could turn this around and maybe put these bookcases back to back, but as you can see, that is not really possible because these bookcases don't take a full floor tile, and because of that it's impossible to put them next to each other in the current cell settings. We can change that. We could say that, well, this cell, you're going to be 128 by 64, so we divide it by 2. Now my closets are suddenly gone because they jump somewhere else, as they are, well, they are somewhere else now because we changed that cell size, but we can just remove them there. And as you already saw, they were standing back to back there. Now with a half cell size, we can now put these back to back towards each other. We could do exactly the same. For example, this sword case, we can now put these back to back and have 2 sword cases next to each other. Now you could continue this on and on and on, and you'll make a beautiful map. So maybe let's go over a moment at the end of this video at what is the positives and the negatives of using this layered system, and what other possibilities you have. Maybe possibilities first. If you were to use, and that's possible, with these stuffs behind the wall, for example, another way to get these items in front of the wall or behind the wall, or get the wall behind, you know what, let's start it again. If we change these stuffs, and these stuffs are in front of the wall and you want to have them behind the wall, you could also change the Z index here under the Z index of the node 2D. You could also change this. You could say this, okay, you're going to be +1, and as you can see, that immediately pops our stuffs behind and in front of the wall. However, by changing the entire wall's index section, we have now broken the other side of the room, where stuffs in front are still being drawn behind, even though they are in a different loading order. Now you could of course then say, okay, the stuff's in front, we could just gonna increase that index as well to 1, and yes, you can, but now you suddenly got 2 layers that have an index. And now, for example, if in the library you say, okay, I want to draw another thing there, now your cacks are going to be drawn on top of the library, so you'd have to change the Z index of the library. Long story short, I advise you to not touch the Z index in your tile maps. It is totally possible with the layering system, by just layering and positioning these layers and loading them in the right order, to get the map that you want. It may be in a very small amount of circumstances you need a Z index, but as soon as you start using that Z index on a regular, you're just creating a huge spaghetti mix, because before you know it, you're changing, like, oh, now I need to fix this, I need to change Z index 2, and then the next item breaks, and like, oh, I need Z index 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, and before you know it, you're at Z index 16 and you want to add another layer and you have no idea what Z index you need to give it, and probably you'll be breaking something somewhere on your map. So my advice is to please use the layering system. Simply reposition these as you see fit. So stuffs behind is behind, doesn't need a Z index. The walls simply Z index 1, stuffs in front Z index 1, and immediately you can see that our library, our book closet is fixed again, simply because we make use of layering and node loading order. So take that away as a lesson. Now, what's the pros and what's the cons of this system? Well, the pros are it's very easy, it's very quick. You can make very easy use. You have like a quick snapping stuff. It's just fast. The downside, when you want to implement this system in an action RPG kind of style game, you're gonna run into problems. Reason being is that once you got projectiles, arrows, ice spears, fireballs flying over this map, and who knows, maybe you're firing a fireball exactly in between here. It would have to be drawn, the fireball, in front of the closets of the library, but behind, maybe if this were to be a tall bookcase, behind the bookcase that would be there. Let's just quickly put a bookcase there. I would have to imagine you've got something like this, and you want to fire that fireball, or you wanted to draw it in front of these bookcases but behind this bookcase, and that's quite hard to do because these are not assets. These are part of a tile set, and the tile set is the asset. So what you would want to do if you want to have projectiles flying around on a map, you would have all these sprites as their own asset with their own collision layers. You will be able to make use of Y sorting. That's another method in Godot to make sure that everything draws in the right order, and that's probably what I'll be discussing in another tutorial with an example of how you can implement that in the use case scenario for an action RPG. That was it for today, guys. Hope you like it. If you did, smash that like button, hit subscribe. Don't forget that little bell icon to make sure you don't miss out on the next tutorial. In the next tutorial, well, I still got a couple of ideas. I also said in the last tutorial on the enemy logic series, we might be returning back to the enemy logic series for melee combat of our enemies, or we might be continuing with this Y sorting. If you're curious, let me know down in the comment section below what you want to see next, and I'll be here next Monday with the next video. See you then.